One of the best ways and most cost-effective ways to grow your business is to connect with the community that you serve. That can either be online or in person if you have a physical location in a town or a city. The reason why I say it's cost-effective is because when you connect with your community, you become a part of that community. They get to know you as an individual, and more importantly, that's an easier way, entry point to connect with your business than just watching an ad. Many companies struggle with this because allowing their employees out into the location or community, so to speak, to interact with businesses or interact with people, sometimes you can't measure it. Sometimes you can't see it and you're not sure there's ROI. But I beg to differ because I have seen it work. And that's why I brought today's guest on board to explain how he connected and grew his business by connecting with his community. Dusty Sutherland was a general sales manager for a very successful automobile group in Ohio, and he'll share how he made the car buying process much easier and faster because he connected with the community. And now what he's bringing to his new company, Cognition Digital, an online marketing company, how are they now connecting with the community to grow that business as well? Really exciting, a lot of fun, but he also talks a lot about the fear that a lot of people have embracing this strategy. So let's dive into today's episode of You're in Charge, Conversations That Spark Change, to talk about connecting your business to your community with Dusty Sutherland. All right, Dusty, thanks again for being here. As I said in my intro, you have been one of the people that over this last year or so when we've met, you've really stood out and, we've become friends. And I really love your perspective on a few things that we're going to discuss today. So first thing I want to talk about, how I met you and what stood out was this idea of being in an automobile dealership, being a manager there, but connecting to the community. Usually auto dealerships, although they are probably the most generous in town, they're one of the higher employers, meaning biggest employers in town, people still have a very leery perspective of auto dealerships, but you broke through that and really connected with the community. So let's talk about that, how you did it, some of the examples, and ways that some of our audience could do that for any business.
Yeah, absolutely. So building a community is super important. Number one, it doesn't cost a whole lot. Number two, it helps with a lot of your marketing. There's just so many benefits to it. And it helps just with relationships throughout. It gets people talking about you. They do your marketing for you. And, and when that happens, there's an overall good feeling about the dealership and partnerships that you have with the community. So I would say the first thing is community is not just necessarily where you are geographically. I mean, that's the first one. That's the most important one. But to anybody that's out there, a community can be who you make or who you love or who you bond with or issues that you find important. And you always want to seek to serve first. So if you serve that community first, it will then in turn remember the service that you gave and serve you. So I'm from a small town in Kentucky, tobacco farming community, very rural, very out in the middle of nothing. And when growing up, my godfather owned a Ford store, and literally every time you turned around, he was involved. He was at the tobacco market. He was at the state fair. He was in Kroger. He was a deacon in the church. I sat next to him in church. Just everywhere you went, he was there and he was involved, and he cared deeply. And I think that's where you've got to start. You've got to start with caring deeply for your community. That's number one, first and foremost. The second is trying to figure out ways to serve the community. So I believe empowering salespeople, and we can talk about this with leadership stuff later, but when you empower salespeople to identify with their community as not just the place they live, but also the place they love, it gives them the ability to get out there in the community and to be more involved at restaurants and stores and other business partners, so that they can feed off of each other. Clinton, one of the salespeople that we had at the dealership, he had just a litany of business partners that he would serve, and we would do Facebook Lives with them and get them involved in the car dealership. And we had one lady that came in that ran a beauty salon, and she was close to closing on a deal, and I think they had already closed on the deal, and I got put together here. But she said, "Hey, I'll buy the car right now if we can wax your armpits." And I said, "What?" And so I know. And so I was like, "Yeah, sure, absolutely. Let's do this." So we did this Facebook Live. She went in and she had a little commercial because Clinton's got a huge following. So she put together this huge following of people on Facebook Live to watch her prowess of waxing. And we got her involved in the dealership, which in turn got us involved in the community and another business in the community. So whenever that business overheard somebody saying, "Man, I really need a car, or I need a place to service my car," they thought, "Oh, go to Wilmington Auto Center. They help me. I'm going to help them."
Right.
So and that's a silly, funny way of doing it. But when we build these, I call them like BNIs, like mini BNIs that self-made, where I have a certain level of service that I like to provide to my customers. If I go to a restaurant, or I go to a barber, or I go to another company out in town,
Right.
and I get the same level of service that I would give, we instantly bond. We instantly have like this understanding that we're going to treat our customers great. And then that's when you have the chance to go, "Hey, would you like to be involved with my business?" And they work out an agreement where if, like let's say you get a free dozen donuts if you buy a car from me. It's a cheap, inexpensive way to create a business-friendly relationship around your community by helping these small businesses. And that's not even counting taking care of people that are in the community.
Right.
So, I'm not the arbiter of this. There are people that are so much better at this than me in this space at building community and being everything to everyone. So when somebody thinks, "Hey, there's a family that needs diapers," well, what if that salesperson was the go-to person to help that family get diapers or put something together?
Right.
And that's what Clinton did. I mean, it was beautiful. He put together fundraisers, raised like $28,000 in one weekend for a family whose daughter had cancer. And it was just the most beautiful thing because the community came out of the woodwork to help this family. And I think what we tend to forget is that there are heroes all around us. They've just got to be exposed as being heroes. We've got to show them off as being heroes, and we've got to make them part of being heroic in their community and making them a part of that. So this, Clinton, yeah, he was the linchpin that put everything together, but he made the entire community the hero, which just blew up even more and made them want to serve them even more.
So let me just unpack a few things there. So for those who are listening, again, you'll understand from as I said in my intro, Dusty oversaw a car dealership. So Clinton is one of the salespeople in the dealership. So when you think of a salesperson, you think, well, it's a one-way relationship. You come to me, I sell you something, off you go, and I don't see you again until you need to buy something from me again. So one of the things that you said, and I think this bears deeper conversation, is you empowered the salespeople to be part of this. Now, many times the owner, leader of a company, face of the company will be that person who may be doing similar things out there in the community and being that steward or connector. So what you did was multiplied it out by having everyone do that. Why don't more people allow the salespeople to connect in that way, do you think, versus owner only, if at all? Why, if it works, why are we so hesitant to have our employees connect in that manner in the community?
That's a pretty loaded question. And I think it goes down to hiring and the culture from the top down. So when I was in the Navy, you hire, well, you don't really hire anybody. You get what you get. And the folks that you got, there was really no, you had to mold them into this vision of what they had to be and what the U.S. Navy had always been and what had to be accomplished and what had to be done. Where we have this ability to take folks that just have a deep empathy and care about the place that they live and the people that they will take care of, and then just show them how to do it, like give them the ability to do it. So I think empowering a salesperson to say yes as often as possible is extremely important and also very scary. So, you're not always saying yes. Sometimes you're saying, and to back up to this, you're not always saying yes. Sometimes you're saying, well, this is what I can do. Mm-hmm. But when you give the salesperson the ability to create this following and then go out into their community, and whatever their community is, whether it's a place or whether it's a group of people, like for me, I have a soft place in my heart, obviously for veterans, that I want to take care of the veteran community. So we go out and we do things to serve the veteran community. I did something for FFA. But when you do these things and you give the salespeople the autonomy to do it, they are going to be coming away with the mentality of what the dealership's set of morals are, their level of service. As long as there's an understanding between the salesperson and the dealership's ownership, it should be one and the same. It should mirror. Obviously, the community may be underserved, but the level of service, the level of understanding, the level of culture should all be the same. It's number one, and I would say there is a level of laziness on some that are just like, man, that's really hard to go out and build this business empire with other businesses. It's really hard to go out and put together these fundraisers. It's exceptionally hard to do that, but the dividends that it pays off are huge.
Do you think that people don't do that, or ownership may not believe in that? Because one, I need my salespeople here so I can watch them, monitor them, make them work. Because if they go out for the day to do all of these things, how do I know they're really doing it? And then number two, you may or may not see an immediate return on that time or investment. But in my mind, I think it's going back to the way sales were 20, 30, 40 years ago, where you were always out building relationships and being at the Chamber of Commerce and playing golf and handing your card out to everybody. You weren't stuck in that location. Do you think it's some of the reasons why it doesn't happen is it's that trust or lack of control over employees?
I think it's a level of fear. So yeah, it is a level of fear. Absolutely, unequivocally, that there's this mentality, and it's not an old school dealer thing. Trust me, I came from an old school dealer. I grew up around an old school dealer, and an old school dealer didn't care about how many phone calls you made a day. They didn't care how many emails you sent. They didn't care. They cared about how many connections you made a day. How many real conversations, how many real connections, how many people did you touch? How many people did you help? What did you actually do? How did you get in front of people? How did you get a better message in front of people?
Right.
And so, Tim Cox said something DMSC last time that just made me laugh out loud. And he said, you got 50 phone calls to make, and they say on average 2 are going to answer. Which 2? And everybody kind of looked at each other, and he goes, the 2 that'll answer, right? And you're like, yeah, well, which 2 are those? Well, nobody knows. But when you're actually actively in the community and present, you have to be present. And if you're present in the community doing something of service for the community, then when the community goes, hey, I need a car, they're going to come to you. Two types of sayings to take away from that is front of mind or back of the line. And when you seek to serve, the market will serve you. I mean, that's really it. The community will help you when you serve it first, always.
Well, I think, and why I wanted to talk to you about this, because I truly believe in what you were doing. And I always wonder why more people are not doing this, is where
it's hard.
You're building. Well, I'm not sure if it's hard. I think it's not asked of people to go do it. I think some people would love to be able to go out and connect, or spend part of a day at an event, or go help a community, versus no, I have to be in the physical location of whatever business. And this applies to any business. I need everyone in the office so I can see them and count their actions. And then that becomes transactional, meaning the only time I'm calling you is when I want to sell something. The only time I see you is when you walk into my place of business and we're going to transact. So then business becomes purely transactional, but not memorable. I don't know who you are as a person because I only see you one time, versus, to your point, there was a fundraiser. Oh, here's Dusty. At church, there's Dusty. Oh, someone needed this. There's Dusty. And now you start to connect to Dusty. And oh, by the way, he sells cars. I think that's a better way of, think about like your neighbors. I mean, your neighbors, and all of a sudden, if your neighbor is selling cars, or that's what they do for a living, when you have a question about a car, hey, Dusty, can I ask you a question? That's what you're trying to do for the whole community. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, you would absolutely hope that's the case. And I mean, nothing made me any more nauseous. I was thinking about that when you said your neighbor, then coming home and seeing your neighbor across the street in a car that they bought from another dealership that sold the same as you, because you didn't go over there and talk to them enough, or you weren't over there, serving cookies or helping out when they, had a fundraiser going on with the kids and all that stuff. It's being omnipresent in the community and being connected to the community is the most important thing. And I cannot believe that people would think, the first thing that everybody will think would go, well, that sounds expensive. How much more expensive is transactional sales versus relationship sales? I guarantee you relationship sales is hands far and above, head and shoulders, all the way pinnacle, so much cheaper for a dealership to execute on than it would be transactional sales only. I tell customers this, and I believe it when I would go out and talk to them, which was all the time, because I would come. There was a tower, but we really didn't. I hated staying up there. So if there was customers out there, and I'm out there telling dad jokes, making myself available, answer questions, just because I wanted to be present. I wanted to show the salespeople that there is no disconnect. There is no, that the wizard behind the curtain, you can't go see him. That's not who we are. That's why when you and PCG helped out with our marketing on our website for going to the chat button, that was the impetus for that, because we wanted to be the people that you could ask anything to, and to ask anything at any time of day, whenever you need us, we're here for you. And you can put that message out as much as you want. And until your community trusts that that's what you're really there to do, they're never going to believe it. All commercials and all.
I totally agree. And that goes back to that idea of, when I work with clients or I advise, businesses or individuals, I always tell them to work backwards. How do you want your customers to feel when they're done doing business? That was the way my training was mostly through working in hospitality and restaurants. So, you had to say, well, when somebody leaves that restaurant, how do you want them to feel? So, because that They are going to be your best marketing. They're going to recommend what a great experience it was. But the key is you have to do it tomorrow and the day after, because when they bring someone back, if you don't deliver that great experience, my recommendation, my friends look at me and go, wow, you don't know what you're talking about. And so everybody loses versus this idea of building all these actions up. But to your point, I really think it's not hard to do. It's the willingness to do it and the desire to do it, because it does also take time for, to your point, to really resonate. I can market that we're available, but if I don't answer the phone, I'm not available. If I don't answer questions, I'm not available. It contradicts the marketing. So you really have to figure out ways to deliver on that and actually think it through and build it out.
It's the whole joke of we have this red carpet buying experience. So if you market a red carpet buying experience, what should you have on your showroom floor?
Oh, you better have a red carpet.
if you show up for this red carpet experience and you're looking for the red carpet and there's no red carpet, you're instantly a liar. Instant.
Yeah. Well, you have to then justify or say, well, it's the experience.
Yeah.
But when you anchor it to something like that, when you say 5 stars, that's fine. You don't have 5 stars hanging from your ceiling. But as you said, red carpet treatment, and in your marketing ads, you have a picture of a red carpet, you better have that red carpet or something like that there. So when someone sees it and then they walk into your place of business, and then that just connects it to say, oh, I'm in the right place. Why? Because there's the red carpet. Now you still have to deliver on it, but as a visual connection, they may even laugh at it and go, "Oh, haha, that's really funny. I didn't really think you were going to have a red carpet," but they're there, and then you need to take over beyond that. But it's I really, again, for those listening, being involved in the community, connecting to the community. To make sure that people know who you are, this idea of breaking down the barriers. I don't care what business it is. It could be a restaurant, it could be an insurance agent, real estate broker, car dealership, whatever. That's a building. That's a name. It's how do we connect to the people inside, because that's what we want to do, is go connect with someone who's going to help us understand what I'm looking for. It could be insurance. I want somebody on the other side that's going to make me feel comfortable.
Yeah, it could be watches, could be insurance, could be anything.
It could be anything.
It's that seeking to understand part that's super, and also the presence part that's super that's really important. How much time and effort is spent in training salespeople on a meet and greet? So if you think about this, you have a salesperson that sits at their desk for hours on end, going back and forth, trying to figure out how to perfect the perfect meet and greet. I used to say something silly to customers like, "Hey, is anybody harassing you folks?" And they would say, "No." "Well, mind if I do?" And then they'd laugh, and then we would banter back and forth, and we would build in. But think about that. How much time and effort is spent on figuring that out? Now, what if I told you that the perfect meet and greet didn't happen at the dealership? What if you didn't have to spend all that time? What if they already knew you? What if you already knew them? Like, when you're present in the community, there is no need for a meet and greet. When you are helping the community, there is no need for a meet and greet. They already know you. When people buy, so I tell my salespeople there's 3 things that encompass your product. There's you, the dealership, and the car. So if they bought you, well, that's the hardest part, right? Then the dealership's a brick and mortar place that has services that are kind of nice. And last is the car. Most customers, and I would say most 90+% already know exactly what they want. Why are they buying from you? Why are they buying from the dealership? If they already know you, if they already trust you, and they have an idea of what your process is, well, see, that's what lowers CSI scores, right? unmet expectations. If they buy you and they buy the dealership's process up front, when and here's the thing, if you're present in the community and they like you and they think, man, you're a great guy and you have really great, how you treat people is really awesome. If that dealership hired you, they must also treat people awesome. And
Right.
if the dealership hires people that treats people awesome, then the F&I guy is really nice too, right? And that other manager, he's a great guy. And then the people in service, they're great people. And then next thing you know, you have a community inside the dealership of friends that all they do is when they come in, they're like, hey, how's it going? How's the wife and them? How's this? How's that going? And it can happen, I think, in any market. I think there is no scale to it. I mean, it's just off the charts. You can go anywhere with this.
Well,
Anywhere,
it's the
anywhere in
reason.
the United States.
Well, it's the reason why we associate level of service, customer experience with certain brands, because they've decided this is what we're going to do. They've built the processes or actions to deliver that, and they are relentless to hire the right people to fit that, right? So it's reversed. They're not hiring anyone and then pushing them through. They're saying, no, these are the skills and qualities we're looking for. Let's go hire those people. But to your point, I just interviewed a branding expert, Christine Gritman, and she said her whole philosophy with this idea of personal branding is, why should anyone remember you? Why should anyone keep you in their brain with all the other things that they have to keep in their head? Why you? What's important about you? Where's that connection? As she said, the exact same thing you're saying, that relationship that you start building with your audience. And what you're saying is, be present. And it's so smart. You're pushing your people out into the community to ultimately bring people into the community. But when they come to you, they're more receptive to you versus let me market to you. And then someone says, well, let me go try this. And so I love that.
You know how much easier it is to talk about that stuff when they know that there's a separation between business and relationship, or business and friendship. So, when somebody steps into your business and they're like, I need your help, you go, okay, no problem. And They know that you're going to help them. They know that because that's your brand, because your brand is present, your brand is serving. All of those things that your brand is, whether it's in no matter what, and this goes right back to it when I talk about the difference between contortionist branding and life branding. Be actually who you are. It's way more comfortable and way easier. And the people that are attracted to who you actually are genuinely attracted to who you actually are, and they'll always be there for you, and they'll continue to serve you as well as you will continue to serve them. So, there's no need to be any different. There's no need to act a certain way or build this certain thing or come up with this cool logo or this cool motto. When they see you, they think this. It's a brand. It's already done. Right. My brand is Dusty. There is no Dusty sells cars, Dusty does backflips. It's none of that. It's Dusty. Dusty has a brand. Right. If you want to have something like a go-to as a hashtag or something that can be then put in a folder on your social media so people can easily find what it's like to do business with you or what your customers are saying about you, then that's dandy. That's great. But just realize this, you already have a brand. Well, your friends and your family already see you as something.
Well, that's what people for years have said. It's your reputation. We've just call it brand now, but your reputation always was. My father used to always say, your reputation is more important than anything. Your word and, how people feel when you leave the room. What do they really say when you leave the room? What do they, if they even talk about you, if you leave and nobody cares, or if you come up in conversation, what are they saying? That's your brand. And so I think that's really important to connect. But I think in this, for all of you listening, don't be so hesitant to allow your employees to be really part of the community and spend time involved in the community. Don't just measure actions or really restrict them in your business to say, the only way, I can't trust you to leave. You have to do this. I have to micromanage you. That truly is not creating employee. You're basically creating, robots who are not people, because all they're doing is just following tasks, and they're not present. They're not excited. They don't care. They look at it as a job. So they probably aren't telling their friends and family and neighbors what they do because they're not excited about it. So I love that, being present, being part of the community. I think that really, it really makes your business stand out as a place that solves problems and takes care of the community and takes care of people. I think that's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, your highest, if you could, in all of your KPIs, if one of your KPIs could be the level of happiness on the showroom floor and the level of comfortability in their own skin, oh man. I mean, I know revenue and the amount of cars and all of that stuff is very, very, very important. But I had a manager tell me a long time ago, because I was paid off gross, and I said, "Oh man, I just didn't make a whole lot of money on that car." He goes, "Pay more attention to how happy the customer is, the money will come. Pay more attention to how you make the customer feels, the money will come. Relax, be yourself, listen to the customer, and help them. Everything else will fall in place."
So that's a great place for us to pivot to our next topic, which is, okay, I know there's people sitting here listening going, Dusty, that sounds pie in the sky. That sounds all great. I bet you your business wasn't as successful because you really got to grind. But even if they said, okay, I'm willing to do this, how did you work with your employees, or we'll call it train the employees, lead the employees to be more of themselves, to allow them to find this happiness within the day-to-day grind, let's call it, of any business, which can be boring at times. How did you walk me through it? Because some people are going to say, well, okay, well, how do I actually do this? What would you say? Give them some tips and strategies on how to execute this.
Sure. So first thing I'm always going to say is going to start with me, right? So I had everybody that was in that building had to understand explicitly that I had two jobs. That was to make their job easier and make them more money. So anything that I did, whether it was a process, whether it was paperwork, whether it was how we did one-on-ones, was to make their job easier and make them more money. So if your customers, as a manager or a leader, believe, if those staff members believe, as your customers believe, that you're there to make them more money and make their job easier, man, it makes your life a heck of a lot easier, because all you do is spend all day, every day trying to find kinks in the system, things that slow down the process, things that make it hard on the salesperson to be present in the community, removing things from them that they don't really need to do, stuff that should happen on the day-to-day that's very important, and things that happens on the day-to-day that's not as important. And how do you prioritize that? Well, that's going to have to start with you and having a finger on the pulse of how people feel about what they have to do on the day-to-day basis. And I know that's very broad, but it's got to start there.
No, but I think I interviewed Dan Moore, who's the president of VistaDash, and we've been, friends and partners for a long time, both in work, working together. And that was one of his leadership tips. He says his job is to remove obstacles from his team, so that they can do their job. So, but to that point, if somebody is sitting here listening to this as a leader or someone who's new to leadership, and they're saying, that's not the way it's always been done here. It's always been seen as I'm checking up on you to make sure you're doing things, versus what you're saying is, well, when I'm bringing something up, it's to make your job easier. Is that in the presentation? Is that the setup when you hire them? Because for one person could say, hey, I'm checking on, or I'm inspecting this to remove something. Someone could take it as, hey, you're micromanaging me, get out of my way. So how does that happen?
Yeah, so this is going to go back to the Navy thing. So for anybody that doesn't know, I was a combat medic. I was what's called a Navy corpsman. So I served most of my time with infantry. And in everything infantry, you train how you fight. So you're trying to find out ways, pinch points, areas that's going to get you killed. That's really what you're looking for. And you're trying to minimize those as much as possible and minimize risk, even though there's always going to be risk. You're trying to minimize as much as possible. So and it was funny because you were talking about earlier about starting at the end, how you want to make somebody feel. I call it cutting the nets. Those of you that know who, Coach Valvano was, his first practice of the year was cutting the nets and then starting backwards, going from there. Hey, we cut the nets. All right, now that we cut the nets, how do we get there? It's right. The same type of concept. We take a look at the customer says, yes, now what? Now, what do we put in place? Like for us, we had just a whole bunch of paperwork and you had to go to all these different places and find it. And it made the deliveries take, way longer than they should have. Okay, well, let's take a look at putting all that paper in one place. Then it went to, let's take a look and putting that paper as digital format as possible. So it's only like 1 or 2 signatures to get everything done. So all the salesperson had to do was go out there with an iPad, go through the paperwork, and whatever could be digitally signed could be digitally signed. So you've got to start with these pinch points in these areas that slow anything down or make their job at all more difficult. So
do you
I also have
on that? So on that, when you're doing this again, it's a subtle difference, but I want everyone in the audience to hear what Dusty's saying is, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're involving the people who are actually doing the job in the solution of the job. But so you're coming at it to say, how could we make this better? Or where are the pain points? Or where are you struggling, without any judgment, but that way they're in the solution versus elbowing them out of the way. And I'm got my manager cape on and I'm coming in.
That's the way I did it, by God. That's the way you're going to do it.
Exactly. So is that one of the other tips, is getting feedback from the team or going there as asking questions?
You absolutely have to, to go back to that, to go back to the planning out an operation. Let's say you've got this guy called a gunner. A gunner is like a warrant officer, and he's been around forever. He's prior enlisted. He knows what he's doing. He's been there. He's done it more than you, and more than you will ever do it. So, the operations officer comes up with this mission, says this is how we're going to do it, and he tells the operations officer why he's an idiot and why it's never going to work. And why this is going to get everybody killed. I'm serious. That's his entire job, is just to tell the OPSO that he's dumb and he's made something stupid and he's going to get everybody killed. I know that sounds crazy, but he takes a look. You got to start first with this 1,000-yard view of the entire operation. So if you're back 1,000 yards and you're watching a unit move, you can see where the pinch points are and the problem areas are. But when you're up on it doing it, you're doing it, you're in it, you're always doing it, and you don't know otherwise. You don't know that there's a faster way. So if you take a look at it from a customer standpoint, go get your mom, bring your mom in and say, Mom, I'm going to walk you through buying a car. Tell me where it sucks. Have the salesperson do it. Have you do it. Have the manager go down there and work them through the paperwork. The manager's going to go, man, why are we doing this like this?
Right.
We need to do this. Now, there's always going to be what we call immovables. The immovables have to be operated around, clean up, gas up, those type of things. Yeah. So you operate around those things. Once you got all that operation together and you say, these are the immovables, everything that happens in between there can be shortened and moved and made easier, so that when the customer says yes, it's an in and out situation and everything fires like it's supposed to. Here's the other point, though. Nobody is better. I tell my kids this. There's nobody in the world better than you, and you're better than nobody else, which means you have to work just as hard as anybody else to do everything. which means that in the dealership, there is no, that's not my job.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times when we would be selling 7 or 8 cars at a time, cleanups backed up, and I'm back there as the general sales manager, washing a car, going to gas up a car. That whole serving your community goes right to serving your salespeople, serving your community. Your community as a manager are those that work with you, but you have the title. So you have this title. Part of that title is figuring out ways to serve them better so that they can serve their customers better. And if it means you getting off your duff and going down and gassing up a car, no, you're probably going to have to do that a few times. You should never be above anything.
Well, but that's what I think is great leadership is, again, I go back to the restaurants. I worked under some very amazing restaurateurs. And, I remember one time, some of the people were doing that. That's not my job, acting up, and he just pulled us into a meeting and he said, I want you to be here. Everybody felt really good about that. He said, but I don't need you to be here. He said, I could fire all of you right now and I will be open for business tomorrow. Whether I have to do it or bring my friends in here to do it, we will be open and serve. Will it be as great as I'd love it to be? Probably not, but I don't need. And he always would say he was not above picking up something, filling up something. He said, we work at it together. The title, and this I always stuck with me. He goes, the title is a series of jobs, right? There's duties. So in your case, you're not the general sales manager. You are fulfilling the duties of the general sales manager. And a well-run organization, when Dusty goes home and Dusty takes a day off or Dusty goes on vacation,
doesn't need
someone steps into handles those duties. So the machine continues to move forward. But to your point, it is everybody is there to do one thing, serve the customers and make their experience great. So if you have to go wash a car, hey, got to wash a car. Hey, the only reason I'm washing a car is we're selling 8 cars today and we're busy as all get out, just like that owner would take food out if we were backed up. And he'd say, this is great. He looked at it as a positive. If I'm doing this, it's because we're so busy. Yep. That's a good thing.
And nothing made me or the owner happier when somebody from the sales floor would come and go, hey, can you grab lunch? We're busy. Can you grab? Yeah, heck yeah, I can.
Sure.
Yeah, I got you. Don't worry about it. Let me go get lunch for everybody. Yeah. But I mean, that's part of having a servant's mentality. I'll tell you this, and again, I draw back on the Navy. I'll never forget the first time I saw this sign in the Navy, and it really struck me, like it really made sense. Everything I'd gone through at boot camp, everything I'd gone through with infantry training and everything is when I got to my first aircraft carrier, and they have a damage control section, which is like shipboard firefighters. That's their main job, is to fight and fix things and stuff like that. But they had a sign that hung up there that said shipmate, self. And I'll never forget that, because everybody's mentality is that if the ship's not sailing, we can't complete the mission. If your shipmate can't do his job, then he can't make the ship sail, which means we can't complete the mission. If you're not up to snuff, if you're not taking care of yourself, then you can't take care of your shipmate and help them do their job. Then the ship can't do their movements and complete the mission. Shipmate, self. Whether you looked at it from the top down or the bottom up, it didn't matter. Everybody's job was equally important. Everybody's job was equally, could be done by everybody else. In the Navy, you have a thing called warfare devices. And it's a time-honored tradition that you go, no matter what your job is, and you stand a watch, every watch in the ship, knowing everybody's job, knowing everything that the ship can do. So if something happens, if there was a mass conflagration, then somebody could pick up that person's job and go to town and do it, and there would be no loss. I'll never forget when I got ready to leave the Navy, and I told my Master Chief, I said, "Man, I don't know what these programs are going to do without me here." And he said, "Well, the Navy's been around for like 200 years. It's going to be fine without you." And I was like, "Oh yeah." So here's the thing: if you're running a sales department or a service department or a parts department or a restaurant that doesn't necessarily need you there all the time, you're probably doing a pretty good job at leading.
I agree. I think one of the tenets I learned early on was your job as a leader is to train yourself out of a job for a leader. Meaning,
yeah, absolutely.
You have to have somebody on deck. And the best organizations are always building their bench, so to speak, and the talent below them, whether they stay in your organization or they move to others, again, depending on what happens. I mean, if you're still in that role, somebody who wants your role, there may not be an opportunity to take that role. But the key is, I should be able to leave. I should be able to be at home and the phone doesn't ring and everyone is saying, "Hey, Dusty, what do I do?" In the beginning, okay, but eventually, if they're doing that, you're creating a dependent workforce who can only function if you're there, or they need your permission to do everything. That's exhausting. But to your point is that idea of, I love that, self and shipmate and ship. So same thing, the dealership or your business that's an entity, and everybody, all hands on deck to go help the customer. It doesn't matter. It's the customer that matters. Then we'll figure out, was it a training issue? Was it just a glitch today? We were super busy. Why did we have to deal with that? But that happens after, when we're looking at it, to be able to say what happened so we don't repeat it. If it's a glitch, let's fix it. If it's a training issue, let's fix it. But to your point, it's not judgment. It's, we are a team, we are a unit, and we all have different roles, but nobody's role is more important, because in the case of a dealership, if the porter isn't sweeping because he doesn't think it's important, well, the place is not going to look nice. I don't care what happens. But if I'm sitting there sweeping and you ask that person, what's your job? He's like, I'm making sure this is what I'm representing, cleaning this place up, because that's the level of custom. I want my customers to be happy when they see that. It's not you're sweeping floors. It's I'm a piece to the success of this organization.
Yeah. And they should be on top of that too, because you can, here's the weird thing. Brad Pascal and Ed Slaughter were talking on a video the other day, and this is a great topic about farm team mentality, about there is no farm team for automotive. It's like, I'm a huge Red Sox, I'm a huge baseball fan, and Joey Votto is one of my favorite baseball players. He's a great first baseman. You think of him as irreplaceable. Well, I promise you, if you go to Louisville, Kentucky right now, at first base for the Louisville Bats is his replacement. That guy standing down there. They're training him to go up if something happens to Joey Votto, to take Joey Votto's job when he retires. It's going to happen. So, it's the same thing in this business. Is everybody should be ready to step away or up at any time. If they're doing that, they're comfortable in the process. And I'm going to write something down here because it's sticking in my head, and I want to cover it. Is fear of process, or fear of failure in the process, which is a trust or loss of trust in the process. So salespeople, managers, anything. When I stepped out on a patrol in Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever I was, I never feared for myself. I can't say I lied. Yes, I was scared, obviously, but I never feared about what was going to happen to me that much. It's kind of complicated when you think about it that way. But, and I also never thought about the process. I never thought about, okay, a guy gets a sucking chest wound. This is how I do it. We have a contact right. This is how I do it. We trained to fail, find the failures, get over the failures, and then go. And then when we stepped outside the line, there was no process in mind. It was eyes forward, ears open, click. It was like, you're ready to rock.
One of the salespeople. But that goes to sports as well, is that you repeat it over and over and over again so that your body knows what it needs to do. Yeah. And then you can just be present. I worked in, as I said, restaurants. I worked in other businesses where that's all you did was you trained over and over and over again. Because if I know my product so well, right? And that was one thing that, even in the restaurant, they drilled into you everything that went into a dish. So you didn't have to think about it. You could just listen to the customer. If the customer asked you a question, you were very confident in your answer because you had, to your point is, you trained, you were quizzed. At any moment in time, this manager would walk around and go, okay, Dusty, what's in this sauce here? And you're doing a million things. And he's going, what is it? And it was just drilled into, at any moment in time, I could ask you something and you need to know that. So I think that idea of, I like that. You're training to fail, meaning it's not a bad thing. We're finding
fail in training. You fail in training as often as possible. I will tell you that right now.
Well,
as often as possible.
I don't think they do enough of that. That was where we, as I said, my whole way I train people, I've been training them the same way for all these years, a long time, because that restaurant, I had waited tables and worked in restaurants for a dozen years before I got to this place. And when I got to that place, they could have cared less. They're like, okay, so that means you understand restaurants. And you understand what it is being busy. Let us show you how we do it here. And the people who fought that, well, let me tell you about that. They threw them out. They're like, I don't have any time for this. Let me show you. And they just kept repeating it over and over again. And they wouldn't let you get near the customers until you proved that you knew what they were doing. So you'd follow them around and they'd watch you and they kept asking you questions. And if you failed too many times, they just looked at it and said, well, you don't take this seriously. You can't be on our team because you're not going to screw up the presentation because you want to do it your own way, or you don't want to listen, or you don't want to put in the time. Like, I was scared of this person the first time. I came back like, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I got it. And it was a phenomenal experience. I learned so much, but I don't think we train that way in a lot of businesses, but especially automotive. Because one, it takes time. People think it's condescending. But again, I don't see people walking around going, tell me about this. Tell me about this. Tell me about this.
Think about this. How much fear comes from process failure, or fear of process failure, or fear of personal failure? And I would say, I'll never forget this. One of the salespeople we had just hired, he'd probably been on a couple months, and we're going through all this stuff, and we've all seen it. We've all seen it. Every manager that's ever sat in a store has seen it. A car will drive on, it'll park. Customers get up and they start walking toward the cars. And the salesperson gets up and they stand and look like prairie dogs.
Yep.
Why do they not engage? Why are they not talking to that customer? And I would suffice it to say that it is lack of trust in the process and their training, and it's fear of failure, unequivocally. So if there's a way to tell, like I remember I saw that and I went up to my salesperson and I said, you're going to go talk to him? And he was like, yeah. And I said, what are you afraid of? And he looked at me and I said, no, tell me, it's okay. What are you afraid of? He goes, I don't know what to say. I said, well, why don't you start with hello? Just go out there and say hi. You're a nice guy. You care about people, right? He said, yeah. I said, okay, just go out there and say hi. Go out there and say hi, introduce yourself, and ingratiate to him. I said, as a matter of fact, let's you and me both go. And so we both go out there. You cannot wait to see the fear and then engage after the fear. Go out there with them in the fear. Like, just go. There used to be a thing, and this is another topic for maybe another day, but I cannot stand dealership lingo. I hate it. The Cole Carney talk, the first pencil, the up, Bogue, all of that. that is a combat thing. This is car sales, not combat. There is no difference between them and me. There is no them and me. There's us working together to help you solve a problem. So there should be no fear there. There should be no us versus them mentality. If you get rid of all of that, then it's just me talking to another person and I'm trying to serve them as best as I can. And doing that, removing that fear with that salesperson will help them see it's okay to be me. It's okay to be me. It's okay to listen. It's okay to not talk.
But I think that fear, what you're saying is, and it goes back to what you said in the very, very beginning about being part of a community. It starts from the top down.
Yeah.
If they see this is an atmosphere where failure is criticized and punished or mocked. Now I'm stressed out that what if I fail? Now I have to go deal with that. Number two is, as you said, the fear of the process, the fear of I don't know. Well, why would that person even be there in that position and not feel comfortable? Now, I still could know it and test well in the classroom, but now all of a sudden now we're going live and there's a real person there and I have to do that. Okay. And like you said,
that's the point.
We got to be with them to help ease them over, to show them that, see, you know what you're doing. And they go, oh yeah, I guess I do know what I'm doing, because they put the pressure. But it is that environment of failure is acceptable. As I always tell my team, if you're going to fail forward, we'll learn, but don't keep making the same mistake, because especially after you've done it and now you're, then it becomes, you don't care. And that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. But it is breaking down that fear of, are you creating a fearful environment, and are they prepared, as you said, prepared for battle? And not that sales is battle, but are they prepared to execute their job?
And it's all things. If you notice this, we all go back to serving first. I have expectations of my team, but they have expectations of me.
Sure.
So what are those? What are those expectations? So if we never set an expectation, or we never have those conversations, then you're going to have constant fear of failure. You're going to have constant fear of rejection. You're going to have constant, I'm always going to screw up. I'm going to piss the manager off. I'm going to piss the customer. I'm going to do this. It's going to happen. Yeah, of course you're going to piss me off. You're going to do something that's going to make me mad. But I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to address it, and we're going to work through it, and it won't happen again. I remember my F&I trainer told me, he goes, it's okay to make a mistake one time. And I laughed about that. But it was funny, because it was also the same thing that I learned in the Navy. You make that mistake, then you debrief on that mistake. You find out, you pick it apart. Like, you have to know why these mistakes happen. Like, is it something that was in the environment? Whatever it is, it's all of that stuff. But there's nothing wrong with having a mistake, picking it apart, getting rid of that mistake, and then moving on. It's going to keep happening. It has to keep happening. You have to keep making mistakes to get better.
But see, to me, I frame it a little differently in terms of saying it's results. Right. So what results did we want? And the question is, did we get them or did we not? If we achieve the results, it's the same debrief. Do we know what we did to do these results so that we can do the same actions and generate those same results? Right. Instead of, I don't know what happened, we just won. Right. But you got to know that. But then if I don't, same thing. It's the actions, not emotions, actions. Right. Let's fix those actions so that next time we achieve the result we want. If we don't, and it happens again, okay, are we at least moving a little closer? Okay, there. That's where you uncover their desire or lack of desire to follow the process. It's not emotions. It's not a personal judgment. It's all actions. Actions cause results. If we don't get the results we want, well, we're either not doing the actions we're supposed to, meaning we're doing something else, or you don't believe in the action, so you're not trying, right? And so that way, instead of the word mistake, because then people get all weird on mistakes, versus you were doing something, you just may be doing the wrong thing. I have to understand, I have to figure out, how did you decide to do that instead of that, and then unlock it and move them forward.
Sure. Yeah. And for for lack of a better term, in the Navy, they teach us a flow chart format. Even they don't call it that. It's how my mind thinks. If this, then that. If this, then that. And so, we flow chart. You literally flow chart combat scenarios. And so you're sitting there thinking, oh man, those flow charts are made for PowerPoints and office spaces. That's not necessarily the case. Like, we flow charted everything, and we do the same thing. I do the same thing in what I do now, and I do the same thing with when I was in the dealership. Is I would sit there and go, okay, this is where we want to finish. Let's work our way backwards through it and train on each of those individual components to make them as easy and as seamless as possible, so the customer barely even notices that anything's happening. All they know is you're serving them. If you do that, and I'm going to say this again because the customer feels like you're serving them, if you're training that way and empowering your salespeople to say yes as often as possible, or maybe not, if they can't say yes, they can say, this is what I can do, instead of saying yes explicitly, never saying no. You've empowered the salesperson now, and they're going to feel comfortable in their own skin. They feel like they have power over the process. They're going to have less fear over it. And all they know is, I have to do what's right by the customer. So then guess what? You're now serving your community as your salesperson. So no matter what happens, before I have to ask somebody to do something, go clean the bathroom, go do this, I need you to do that, I need you to do this process, they've got to see you do it first. You've got to serve them first. If you do, they will do.
And I think the other part, as we sort of wind this down, I think one thing that popped in my head as you were saying that is that if you're empowering them and doing all of this, the other piece is you're empowering them to raise their hand and say, I think I found a better way, or what if we could do this, or hey, there was a struggle, Absolutely. Or what do you think about this? Because they're seen as someone who's involved, valued, their opinion is valued, and because
ownership.
Exactly. I always tell, again, I go back to years ago, someone said this to me. I was a regional manager and I would travel around to different of the locations. It was inbound call center, and I would go into there, and if it was performing or not performing, I said, well, this is what, we came up with. And they would say, well, that sounds good in your ivory tower, but this is what's happening out here on the front lines. And I always would say, okay, well, tell me what's going on. Like, conceptually, this sounds like it'll work, but then let's go do it and then get feedback to say, well, these 3 parts work. This one we got to tweak. I had no ego. All I cared about was, were we winning, right? It's not about my idea. It's getting that feedback, like you're saying, from the front lines. And so the more that your team feels comfortable as approaching the leader to say, I'm not sure this is working, or I tried this, or I'm thinking we could do this. That is so important to creating an environment for a successful team, because then everybody's role is valued, which you've said multiple times. No one's role is more important. It's just you're doing different duties than those people are doing. But ultimately, our one goal is serving our customer. You're serving your team, they're serving the customers, but ultimately by doing it, we're all serving our customers.
Yeah. It goes back to that whole saying, which you were saying earlier. I don't care about being right. I care about being successful, which always makes me laugh.
Doesn't matter to me. I care less. I hire smart people and get out of their way.
Yeah. Here's the thing. If we can make in all things the hero, everybody that we serve, the hero of their story, it becomes beautiful. Faith breeds empowerment, and rest is always tied to that faith. So if you have faith in the people that are around you, if you have faith in the process, if you have faith in what you're doing, it's going to breed empowerment. Not only is it going to breed empowerment, it's going to breed rest, which is going to help you be better, a better version of yourself.
Sure.
If you fear something, you've stopped believing in whatever that is, and that has to be addressed. That has to be nipped. That has to be approached. That has to be talked about. Right down from starting goals to what a goal actually is, what's your North Star, how do you actually do that? How do you do one-on-ones? All of that has to come with, okay, this is our process, and we have to have faith in that process. If you have faith in that process and they have faith in the process, then there's a level of empowerment that can be unmatched, which means everybody gets to rest because you're empowered, you're comfortable, and you have faith in what's getting ready to happen, and you don't have to be so knotted up all the time. You don't need to be afraid.
No, I think that's a great way to sort of wind this part down, because I love that. If you have a process but I think to have that faith in the process is the faith that you can change the process, and faith that you have the ability to raise your hand. The key is whatever process is in front of us, it's well thought out. We're going to execute it 100%. But then if it doesn't work, we're going to tweak that and fix it so we can go full bore all the time.
You have to be Dave Wheeler, my desk manager at Bachman Subaru in Louisville, Kentucky. I'll never forget it. He would always tell me when I was a young manager coming up, he would say, you've got to be their strength. You've got to be their calm. He said, when you were a corpsman and somebody was bleeding out, did you freak out in front of them? I said, no. He said, well, why? I said, because I knew what I was doing. I had faith in what I was doing, that I was good enough to do it. And he said, okay. And then he just turned around and went back to reading his book. And I'm like, oh, crap. Okay. So there has to be a level of calmness.
There's also another piece to that is not that you had that. Yes, that gave you comfort, but also just think of that gave comfort to the person that you were working on, because if they saw you freaking out, they're going, oh my God, this is worse, right? I always use the analogy of, if you see the pilot and you're hitting turbulence and the pilot's just joking around, sipping their coffee, you're going, okay, it's not that bad. But if they're pushing all the buttons and they're freaking out, you're going, this is what they do for a living and they're freaked out. It's really got to be bad. So I think I love that point.
So think about that. If you're a customer and you see your salesperson happy, bebopping around, delivering numbers happy, doing your paperwork happy, everything's happy. He's got faith. He's empowered. He's happy. High KPI, your highest KPI is happiness on the showroom floor. And the salespeople, they're going to love it. The customers are going to love it. You're going to love it. Everybody's calm. Everybody's happy. Pie in the sky. That's it.
All right. Well, we got to wind up. I could sit here and talk. See, this is why I love these things. Time just flies. This goes really quickly. So I appreciate that. So before we wrap up and let everybody figure out how to contact you and connect with you, I always ask a few questions focusing on one, meaning one thing. So one thing first would be, if I got all of your friends, family, really close people who know you in a room and they had to describe you with one word, what would that one word be?
That's deep, Glenn.
I told you.
I can tell you what I would hope they would say.
Okay.
Serving.
I like that. That one I would think so. Okay. And second one, what book or thing that you're listening to that's inspiring you that you would share and recommend to other people?
Gosh. I'll tell you the last book that I read that really inspired me to get my stuff together as far as setting up my days is Frank Lope's book, 7-Minute Setup. It's a quick read. It's a great read, and it helped me really kind of tie in my day together and get things together. And then I read a book called Make Your Bed to my kids, written by the Rear Admiral that spoke at that was a Navy SEAL that spoke at the University of Texas. And I read that to my kids. And as crazy as it sounds, that book helped me get my day. It helps wrap my brain around getting my day started and putting things together by reiterating that to my children.
Right.
Make your bed.
Okay. See, I like both of those. All right. Usually I ask one, there's two more questions, but I would be remiss because one of your talents are dad jokes. So you got to give me one dad joke. Give me a dad joke. Give me a dad joke.
Gosh. Okay. All right. So if you ever lock yourself out of the house, make sure you just take a knee right in front of the door, right in front of the lock, Glenn, and you speak to it really calmly and quietly, because communication is the key.
Okay. Well, that was interesting. That was a good one. I like that one. I'm going to use that on my kids so they can.
Well, what's the difference between a hippo and a zippo?
I don't know. What?
One's heavy and the other's a little lighter.
There you go. All right. So last question. We talked about a lot of things here. And I always ask my guests, if you had to hope the audience got one thing out of this conversation, just one, what would that one thing be?
Seek to serve first, unequivocally. Serve your community. Serve whoever your community is, whoever is important to you, whoever's doing something for you, serve them. Serve them. Listen to them. Be there for them and serve them. Be their strength.
Love that. Love that. That's a phenomenal way to end. So why don't you tell everyone where they can connect with you online, if they want to reach out, and most of you should reach out because Dusty is a great person. So where can they find you?
Yeah. So Facebook, Instagram, if you go just type in Dusty Sutherland, you'll find me. DSully822 on Instagram. I'm very active on there. I share a lot of stuff with my kids playing soccer and baseball and cheerleading and all that. So you can follow along and watch that. I'm a pretty proud dad. You can message me directly through there, or you can email me at dusty@cognitiondigital.io. That's the best. That's the best way to message me.
All right. Well, listen, I had such a great time. As I said, you have been such a joy and a happy part of meeting you, part of my life now. I love contacting you, chatting with you, and talking with you. I've been wanting to get you on here because I truly believe, why we connected is we both have a servant's mentality and a servant's heart, but you really do walk that talk. So I really do appreciate your time today. I think you've given a lot of great value here. So audience, you know the drill. Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple, or if you're an Android user on Spotify, you can jump over to the YouTube channel to watch our conversation, and you can see Dusty's phenomenal mutton chops, as he says he's bringing mutton chops back. So he's a very handsome man there. Also, please, if you found value today, share this out. I'm sure there's a lot of people who could benefit from what Dusty shared with us today. And as always, I appreciate your time. I know there's a lot of places that you can consume content, but the fact that you spend time with Dusty and myself today means the world to me. Thank you so much. And as I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge, but Dusty just gave you a few more tools to help you become more successful, both personally and professionally. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Dusty, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it, my friend.
Glenn, thank you so much. And hey, by the way, you're doing a great job and everybody's proud of you.
Well played. See y'all.